All right, Unit 5 again here, writing and solving proportions. So our learning intention is to use proportions to solve ratio problems. You can solve proportions using various methods. You'll know you're successful when you can find a missing value that makes two ratios equivalent, and when you can use proportions to represent and solve real life problems. So when you're solving proportions, the last section that we did, we really focused on, we were identifying if something was proportional and we used the cross products method, but there are several methods that you can use, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So solving proportions using various methods. Man, got a math or spelling error here. So our first method is the mental math method. Okay. Sometimes we talk about this all the time, but what if I can just do it in my head? Great. That is actually a method. So solve 3/2 equals x over 8. So our step one with the mental math method is to think the product of 2 and what number is 8? Okay. So 2 times what makes 8? Step two is because the product of 2 times 4 is 8, I'm going to multiply the numerator by 4 to find x. So since I know 2 times 4 makes 8, whatever I do to this, I have this side, I'm going to do the top. So then I can say 3 times 4 is 12. Therefore, the solution is x equals 12. Okay, so I was able to do that in my head. Okay, well, I know 2 times 4 is 8, so 3 times 4 is 12, x equals 12. Then you have the multiplication method. So we had 5/7 is equal to x over 21. So step one, get the variable x by itself by doing inverse operations and multiplying both sides by 12. So I have these two are equal to each other. I know that this is a division problem. So what we learned in the last unit, I'll just multiply 21 by both sides to get x by itself. And when I multiply that, I'm going to have 21 times 5, divide that by 7, and I get 15. So when I simplify this down, my answer becomes 15 equals x. So that's another option of a way that you can solve this. And then we have the cross products method, which we learned about in the last section. So here's a recap on what that looks like. So if I solve x over 8 equals 7/10, step one, I'm going to multiply the numerator of one ratio by the denominator of the other ratio. So I'm going to take x times 10 and 8 times 7. So x times 10 becomes 10x, and 8 times 7 is 56. So my next step is to get the variable x, in this case, by itself by doing the inverse operation and dividing both sides by 10. So if I divided both sides by 10 like this, I will get x equals 5.6. Okay, so those are three methods that you can use, and unless your problem states that you have to use one of those specifically, you can choose whichever one you are the most comfortable with. So let's look at the other side. So you choose the method in this set of notes. Okay, so you're going to solve the proportion and explain your choice of method. So I do want you to explain why you chose the method that you chose. So don't just write the answer. So you can choose cross products, you can choose the multiplication method, you can choose to use the inverse, you can choose to do mental math, but you're going to tell me what the answer is and why you chose the method that you chose. Okay, so I wrote these already as proportions. This one I wrote as ratio, and you're going to have to write it as a proportion and then solve. This one I also wrote as a form of a ratio, 4 to 3 and 10 to x, and you're going to have to write it as a proportion, then solve it. Don't forget to tell me why you chose the method that you chose. The last one that I'm going to have you do is a story problem. There are 180 white lockers in a school. There are 3 white lockers and for every 5 blue lockers. How many lockers are in the school? So I do want you to show your work because this helps me see if you understand what you're doing. Okay, so try to write out a proportion and then solve the proportion on the page.